Welcome to the frontline, where history comes to life. It is 1268, and the Mongol war drums echo across the Han River as Kublai Khan's armies surround the twin fortress cities of Xianyang and Fancheng. These are not border raids or probing attacks. This is the choke point to the southern Song heartland, the shield protecting the Yangtze River, the supply routes, and the last strongholds of a dynasty that has ruled for 300 years. Mongol siege lines stretch across the plains like a tightening noose. Xianyang's defenders watch from the ramparts as thousands of enemy soldiers dig trenches, build barricades, and prepare weapons meant to tear the city apart piece by piece. Within hours, the bombardment begins. Massive traction trebuchets, pulled by dozens of men at once, fire rocks the size of oxen into the towers. The earth shakes every time a stone hits. Roof tiles explode. Dust clouds roll through the streets. Song soldiers shout orders through the chaos as the Mongols continue firing day and night, never allowing the defenders a moment of quiet. But this time, Kublai Khan wants more than brute force. He wants a weapon capable of cracking walls that had resisted the Mongols for decades. So he brings in foreign engineers, Muslim specialists from Persia and the Middle East, men who understand the new science of counterweight trebuchets. Their machines arrive in pieces, hauled by hundreds of laborers, towering above the battlefield when assembled. When the first arm swings and the counterweight drops, the sound is like thunder splitting the sky. The projectile smashes into Xianyang's outer defenses and sends stone blocks flying. The defenders instantly know they are facing something new. The old walls that held back decades of Mongol pressure now tremble under the power of engineered destruction. Day after day, tower after tower collapses. One section of wall buckles, then another. The Song commanders attempt desperate sorties, nighttime raids to burn the siege machines, but Mongol heavy cavalry intercept them every time. Inside the city, panic spreads. Shops close. Civilians flee underground. Wells grow crowded. Supplies shrink. Xianyang, once a proud symbol of Song resistance, now feels like a dying fortress waiting for the final push. While the siege intensifies, Kublai Khan is far away in the north, building something completely new. In 1271, he reorganizes the government, restructures the bureaucracy, and summons advisors from every corner of his empire. He issues an announcement that sends shockwaves across Asia. He declares a new dynasty, the Yuan, and claims the mandate of heaven. He proclaims himself the rightful emperor of China, even though half the country is still at war. It is a political strike as sharp as any sword, a message to the world that the conquest is not just military anymore. It is dynastic, absolute, and inevitable. In the southern Song court, fear spreads like wildfire. Ministers argue. Generals plead for reinforcements. Rumors of betrayal fill the palace. The emperor is young and surrounded by factions who can't agree on anything. Reports arrive daily. Mongol armies crossing rivers, taking towns, building fleets on the Yangtze, tightening the ring. And through all of it, Xianyang is still being pounded into dust. The siege stretches into years. The Song send reinforcements. The Mongols intercept every convoy. The Song attempt to break the blockade with ships. The Mongols sink them. Inside the walls, the defenders now ration rice, repair breaches in the darkness, and brace for the inevitable. Then the final blow comes. The Mongol counterweight trebuchets fire in synchronized volleys. Entire sections of wall disintegrate. Mongol marines storm the riverbank. Cavalry charges cut down retreating troops. The Song commander realizes the city cannot hold. In a moment of grim clarity, he surrenders Xianyang to avoid total slaughter. After years of resistance, the key to southern China falls. The gates open. Mongol banners rise. The path into the southern Song heartland lies exposed. And with Xianyang gone, the rest of China begins to crumble. This is the moment the Mongol conquest stops being a brutal campaign and becomes the machinery of a new dynasty ready to take the entire empire. The fall of Xianyang opens the gates to the southern Song heartland, and Kublai Khan wastes no time. He orders a full-scale, all-fronts invasion designed to crush the dynasty before it can regroup. The Mongol war machine shifts into its next phase: fleets, cavalry, siege engineers, and infantry, all moving in perfect, terrifying coordination. On the rivers, new Mongol fleets begin drifting south. These ships are not traditional Mongol craft. They are built by Korean shipwrights, fitted with armored decks, reinforced hulls, and firing towers. They move like floating fortresses. Every river the Song once relied on becomes a highway for invaders. Mongol archers loose fire arrows from the decks. Bombard crews hurl gunpowder bombs that explode against city walls in thunderous bursts. River patrols that once protected the Yangtze are swept aside like driftwood. Inland, the Mongol cavalry rides through the rice paddies in long, disciplined columns. Horses kick mud into the air as squads of engineers rush ahead to tear down gates, fill in ditches, and place portable bridges across waterlogged terrain. Every obstacle the Song rely on, rivers, canals, irrigation channels, becomes useless. The Mongols adapt faster than the defenders can react. Song generals attempt counterattacks, but the army is fractured, exhausted, and poorly coordinated. Many commanders distrust the court in linen, others distrust each other. Orders arrive late, messages get intercepted, reinforcement convoys disappear. Some troops still fight with courage, ambushing supply trains, burning pontoon bridges, launching night raids on Mongol camps, but the momentum is gone. City after city falls in rapid succession. Fancheng collapses quickly, its walls still shattered from earlier battles. Sheiyang tries to resist but is overwhelmed by mass trebuchet fire and a river assault that breaches the gates in hours. Ruzhu holds out longer, but once Mongol engineers tunnel beneath the walls and detonate explosives, the defenders scatter. As each city falls, more Song troops surrender, more governors flee, more civilians flee south in waves of panic. Rumors spread of entire towns switching sides, of officials defecting, of Mongol officers promising leniency if gates open peacefully. The Song court in linen becomes a nest of fear. Ministers accuse each other of treason. Military commanders are executed for failures beyond their control. Confusion replaces strategy. In the streets of Linen, the capital of a dynasty that once ruled the richest empire on earth, crowds gather at the gates waiting for news, only to hear city after city has fallen. The royal family packs for evacuation. Officials burn documents and prepare for flight. By 1274, the Mongols stand at the edge of the lower Yangtze Basin, the final natural barrier before the capital. Kublai Khan sends fleets loaded with tens of thousands of troops southward, while cavalry pushes down riverbanks clearing resistance. The Song attempt one final stand along the river defenses, but Mongol gunpowder bombs tear their ships apart. Archers on the riverbanks unleash endless volleys. Drums echo across the water. By 1275, the Mongol armies advance in a massive pincer movement, combining river assaults with land encirclements. Linen, the heart of the southern Song, is now isolated. Inside the capital, the government collapses. The emperor is a child, barely old enough to speak clearly. His mother, the Empress Dowager, begs ministers for options. There are none. Grain prices skyrocket. Civilians riot. The city walls tremble from distant bombardment. Envoys sent to negotiate return with a demand: unconditional surrender. In early 1276, with no hope of relief and no army left capable of defending the capital, the Song court surrenders. Royal banners are taken down. Mongol generals march into Linen with precision and discipline. The child emperor is carried out of the palace and handed over. The imperial seal, the symbol of the mandate of heaven, is surrendered to Kublai Khan. For the first time in 3 centuries, the southern Song dynasty's capital belongs to someone else. But even this is not the end. Remnants of the Song royal family escape to the south coast: generals, loyalists, ministers, ship captains, entire households fleeing by sea. They regroup in the coastal provinces, rallying surviving fleets and preparing for one last stand. The Mongols have taken the capital, but not yet the dynasty. The war is not over. The conquest of China is entering its final, ruthless phase, and Kublai Khan intends to crush every remaining ember of resistance. When Linen falls and the child emperor is captured, Most of China believes the dynasty is finished, but the loyalists refuse to accept it. Ministers, generals, palace servants, and surviving princes flee south in a desperate exodus. Fleets packed with refugees sail toward Fujian and Guangdong, carrying everything they can save: court archives, royal robes, sacred seals, and the last living symbols of the Southern Song. The Mongols follow immediately. Their cavalry storms across Jiangxi and Fujian, while Mongol naval forces sweep down the coastline, capturing ports and destroying shipyards. The Song reorganize in chaos, setting up temporary courts in coastal strongholds like Wenzhou, Quanzhou, and Fuzhou. Two young princes are proclaimed emperors in rapid succession, each hopping to rally what remains of the dynasty. Admirals like Zhang Shiji and Lu Ziufu rebuild the Song navy from whatever ships survived the retreat: river craft, merchant junks, fishing boats, anything that can float. Meanwhile, Mongol fleets built by Korean and northern shipwrights dominate the seas with larger hulls and more advanced siege weapons. The last Song loyalists realize they can no longer hold territory. Their only hope is to keep the imperial family alive and mobile. This becomes a war fought on water: ambushes between islands, nighttime chases, ships burning offshore. Loyalist fleets hide in coves and estuaries, slipping away whenever Mongol sails appear on the horizon. But Mongol strategy is relentless. They cut off supply routes, take harbor after harbor, and block every escape path. By 1279, the Song retreat finally ends in Guangdong at Yamen, a rocky inlet near modern-day Jiangmen. Here, with nowhere left to flee, Admiral Zhang Shiji prepares for the dynasty's last stand. He orders the entire fleet, more than 1,000 ships, to be chained together in a massive floating fortress. There will be no retreat, no scattering, no escape. Either they hold or they die. The 8-year-old Emperor Zhao Bing is placed on the central command ship, surrounded by ministers, scholars, and the last loyal guards of the dynasty. Mongol commanders approach with overwhelming force: fire ships, archers, catapults, and war junks large enough to ram Song vessels apart. The battle begins with fire arrows streaking across the sky. Mongol siege crews launch gunpowder bombs that explode on the decks. Song ships cannot maneuver. Their chain formation becomes a trap. Mongol fire ships drift into the mass of vessels, igniting one hull after another. Flames race across the water. Smoke chokes the air. Song sailors try to cut the chains, but naval officers order them to fight to the end. Admiral Zhang Shiji rallies every ship still intact, but the Mongol fleet surrounds them from all sides, tightening the ring until no ship can move. Song soldiers fall into the sea. Others burn on the decks. The Mongols keep advancing. In the chaos, the young emperor stares at the flames and hears the screams of his court. Lu Ziufu, the loyal minister who has guarded him since the fall of Linen, kneels beside him. He tells the boy that a true emperor does not surrender. Then, holding the imperial child in his arms, he walks to the edge of the ship and jumps into the sea. Dozens follow: ministers, generals, servants, choosing death over capture. The Song dynasty ends in the waves, drowned beneath fire and smoke. Admiral Zhang Shiji breaks free with a handful of ships, but is lost shortly after in a storm. With the destruction at Yamen, all organized resistance collapses. For the first time in centuries, China is fully united under a foreign dynasty. The Southern Song is gone, and the Yuan Dynasty's rule is complete. With the Southern Song destroyed and China finally under his control, Kublai Khan shifts from conquest to construction, turning the Mongol war machine into a governing empire. His first major move is relocating the capital to Dadu, the foundation of modern Beijing. Engineers, architects, artisans, and laborers flood into the north, raising new palaces, administrative halls, granaries, and markets. Kublai designs Dadu to be the beating heart of his empire. Wide straight roads, massive walls, moats, planned districts for merchants, monks, and officials. From here he launches a total overhaul of how China is run. The Mongol relay system becomes a full postal network stretching from the Pacific to the borders of Persia, with fresh horses at every station and guards protecting messengers across deserts and mountains. Census takers sweep through the countryside, counting households, fields, and taxable goods. Bureaucratic offices are rebuilt, some based on Chinese models, others imported from the steppe or the Islamic world. Kublai connects China's economy to the entire Mongol world from Central Asia to Iran, expanding caravan roads, repairing bridges, and investing in river transport. Massive trade routes link Dadu to Samarkand, Bukhara, Karakoram, and beyond. Merchants carry silk, porcelain, spices, and medicinal herbs westward, bringing back silver, glassware, carpets, and mathematical knowledge. Paper money becomes the backbone of the Yuan economy. Kublai standardizes its production, orders new printing workshops, and forces officials to accept it for taxes, hopping to fuel trade and strengthen state control. Religion transforms under Kublai as well. Unlike previous dynasties, the Yuan court does not elevate a single faith. Muslims, Christians, and Buddhists all find patrons inside Dadu. Tibetan Buddhist lamas become personal advisors to Kublai. Nestorian churches thrive. Taoist monasteries negotiate their status. Islamic scholars arrive from Central Asia to manage finances. It is an empire of global religions inside a single capital. The arrival of foreigners becomes so common that Dadu feels like the world's crossroads, and among these arrivals is Marco Polo. The Venetian traveler lives in China for more than a decade and later writes accounts praising the empire's wealth. Bustling markets, grand canals, silk workshops, incredible postal routes, and Kublai's highly organized administration. These descriptions travel back to Europe, shaping Western imagination for centuries. But behind the grandeur, the Yuan Empire has a harder side. To stabilize the administration, Kublai imposes a strict ethnic hierarchy. At the top are the Mongols, who hold the highest offices and military commands. Below them are the Semu, Central Asians with technical skills in finance, astronomy, engineering, and accounting, who run major bureaucratic posts. Han Chinese, especially those from the former Southern Song, are placed at the bottom, taxed heavily, given fewer rights, and often excluded from high government positions. This creates resentment that simmers across the countryside. Local officials, often foreign-born, sometimes exploit their power, demanding bribes or abusing peasants. The empire grows rich at the center, but many farming communities face droughts, new taxes, and corrupt administrators with little oversight. Large construction projects require forced labor. Rebellions flare in rural areas, only to be crushed quickly. Still, the Yuan Empire reaches its peak during this period, a vast, interconnected world unlike anything China has seen. Kublai's court becomes a blend of steppe traditions, Chinese statecraft, Persian finance, and Buddhist ceremony. Trade flows, cities expand, roads and canals fill with traffic. Despite its flaws, the Yuan represents one of the most ambitious attempts to govern China on both continental and global scales. Under Kublai Khan, the empire stands at its height, powerful, wealthy, and connected to the wider world like never before. As the Yuan Empire reaches its peak, the first cracks begin to show, and under Kublai's aging leadership, the system starts to bend in ways no empire could survive. The turning point comes from Kublai's ambition. He wants to conquer everything the Mongols have not yet taken, and that leads him into 3 disastrous foreign wars. First, Japan. In 1274 and 1281, Kublai launches 2 enormous invasions across the sea. Korean shipyards are forced to build thousands of vessels. Tens of thousands of soldiers board the fleets, but storms slam into both armadas. The second invasion is annihilated by the kamikaze typhoon. Hundreds of ships sink, tens of thousands drown. The losses drain the treasury and shake confidence in Kublai's leadership. Then comes Vietnam. Dense jungles, heat, disease, and fierce resistance break Mongol armies that once dominated the Eurasian steppe. China's soldiers die miles from home with nothing gained. And then Java, another tropical disaster. By the early 1290s, the Yuan Dynasty is bleeding money, men, and legitimacy. Inside China, natural disasters strike the countryside. The Yellow River floods, crops fail, locusts ravage fields, and famine hits entire provinces. Heavy taxation meant to rebuild the treasury only makes things worse. Peasants sell land, tools, even children to survive. Anger spreads. Corrupt officials take bribes or hoard grain. Local uprisings flare in Henan, Shandong, and Jiangxi. The Yuan attempt to crush them quickly, but distance, corruption, and poor logistics slow every response. Meanwhile, Kublai grows older and more isolated inside his palace at Dadu. His trusted advisors die. His wife Chabai dies. He eats heavily, drinks heavily, withdraws from daily government, and sinks into depression. The emperor who once ruled the largest empire on earth loses his energy and authority. When Kublai dies in 1294, the decline accelerates instantly. His successors, a rapid line of grandsons, cousins, and short-lived emperors, lack both charisma and control. Mongol nobles feud openly, assassinate each other, and fight for influence. Factions inside the palace battle for access to the throne. Corruption spreads even further into the bureaucracy. As the Mongol ruling class weakens, Han Chinese secret societies begin to rise. The White Lotus movement spreads in the lower Yangtze, promising spiritual salvation and political liberation. Soon after, the Red Turbans emerge, a loose coalition of rebels, millenarian monks, starving peasants, and local warlords united by one idea. The Yuan have lost the mandate of heaven. They attack tax offices, kill corrupt governors, burn granaries, seize towns, and capture river ports. The Yuan try to stamp them out, but their armies are overstretched, poorly supplied, and no longer feared. Whole provinces rebel, cities declare independence. The empire fractures. The Mongols still control Dadu and the northern heartland, but the south, the richest part of China, slips away piece by piece. Administration collapses, postal routes close, trade routes become dangerous, bandits roam freely. Even former Yuan generals desert and join the rebellions. By the 1350s, the dynasty is in free fall. The Red Turban forces capture fortified cities. They seize major rivers. They take grain depots and armories. Yuan counterattacks fail, and every defeat inspires more uprisings. China plunges into chaos, a nationwide anti-Mongol revolution fueled by hunger, anger, and desperation. And from this chaos, one rebel commander begins rising above all others. A former monk, orphaned by famine, hardened by poverty, brilliant in strategy, and ruthless in war, Zhu Yuanzhang, the man who will one day overthrow the Yuan and build the Ming Dynasty. The Yuan Dynasty begins to collapse the moment a single rebel leader rises above the chaos. Zhu Yuanzhang, born into poverty, orphaned by famine, and once a wandering monk, Zhu joins the Red Turban movement not as a noble or warlord, but as a survivor who understands the suffering of ordinary people. He quickly proves himself, disciplined, intelligent, and ruthless when needed. As Mongol authority disintegrates across southern China, Zhu launches a series of fast, coordinated offensives that shock the weakened Yuan governors. His first major victory is the capture of Nanjing, a rich and strategically perfect city on the lower Yangtze. Zhu transforms Nanjing into his capital, fortifying it, importing scholars, attracting generals, and establishing a stable government, something no other rebel leader can match. While other factions fight each other for power, Zhu builds a professional army, a tax system, and a disciplined administration. Slowly, methodically, he takes control of the entire south. Grain fleets on the Yangtze fall under his command. Armories and river ports join his ranks. Cities that once resisted now voluntarily surrender, seeing him as the only leader strong enough to defeat the Mongols. Meanwhile, the Yuan court in Dadu collapses into infighting. Emperors rise and fall in rapid succession, assassinated or replaced by rival factions. Corruption spreads everywhere. Generals refuse orders. Tax collectors flee uprisings. Whole provinces stop sending grain to the capital. When the Yuan attempt counterattacks, their armies arrive half-starved, unpaid, and unable to match Zhu's well-fed, well-organized forces. Famine strikes northern China. Locust swarms wipe out harvests. The Mongols lose the mandate of heaven in the eyes of the people. As Zhu's armies advance, city after city throws open its gates. In 1363, he crushes his greatest rival, Chen Yuliang, at the massive naval battle of Lake Poyang, one of the largest water battles in history. From there, the path to victory is open. His forces sweep east, north, and west, capturing key strongholds and cutting off the Yuan from their remaining supporters. In 1367, Zhu orders his generals to begin the march toward the final goal, the northern capital of Dadu. Yuan officials panic, sending desperate pleas for reinforcements that never come. The Mongol court packs treasures, burns archives, and prepares to flee. By early 1368, Ming armies move like a tidal wave across the northern plains, meeting almost no resistance. Entire garrisons surrender rather than die for a dynasty everyone knows is finished. In the summer of 1368, Ming troops reach the walls of Dadu. There is no final battle, no heroic defense, no grand last stand. The Mongols abandon the city in silence, fleeing across the steppes back to Mongolia. Dadu falls without a fight. The same city Kublai Khan had built as the center of a world empire is now lost without a single arrow fired. Zhu Yuanzhang enters as the new ruler, declaring the founding of the Ming Dynasty. China returns to Han Chinese rule for the first time in a century. The Yuan do not disappear entirely. They continue in Mongolia as the Northern Yuan, insisting they are still rightful emperors of China. But in reality, their era is over. Zhu, now Emperor Hongwu, begins rebuilding the country left shattered by war, famine, and Mongol collapse. The dynasty that began with Kublai Khan's vision ends with the same forces that built it: ambition, violence, and the relentless movement of history. Mongol conquerors once used speed, discipline, and terror to reshape Eurasia. But in China, those same forces eventually destroyed their ability to rule. By 1368, the Yuan Dynasty is gone, leaving behind a legacy of innovation, brutality, cultural blending, and transformation. And as the Ming banners rise across the walls of Dadu, one era ends and another begins. From 1271 to 1368, the Mongols conquered, ruled, and reshaped China. But in the end, the empire they built collapsed under the same forces they once unleashed. Kublai Khan founded the Yuan Dynasty, but the land of China would rise again under a new dynasty.